Let's start at the beginning.
Not the beginning of this specific strike, the actual beginning, the conflict between Israel and Iran at its deepest.
Level case, it is not a modern conflict, it is an ancient conflict.
Wearing modern clothes, stay with me here, because this is important. Iran and ancient Persia has a complicated and layered history with the Jewish people. The book of Esther is set in Persia. The story of Purim, the Jewish holiday celebrated every year, is essentially the story of a Persian official named
Haman, who tried to annihilate every Jewish
person in the empire. He failed. The book of Esther records this, and the Jewish people have celebrated that failure every year for over 2,000 years. Now fast forward to today, the current leadership
of Iran, the Islamic revolutionary regime, has
repeatedly and explicitly called for the annihilation of Israel. This is not a fringe position.
This is official policy.
It is stated in speeches. It is written in documents. It is funded through proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. The ideology driving those calls, it is apocalyptic in nature. Many of the senior clerics in Iran believe in the coming of the Mahdi, a messianic figure in Shia Islamic eschatology, and they believe that creating chaos in the Middle East, specifically around Jerusalem, will hasten that arrival. Let that sink in for a second. We are not dealing with a nation-state that is simply pursuing rational geopolitical interests. We are dealing with a regime that is operating from an apocalyptic theological framework that changes everything about how you assess their decisions. A rational nation-state calculates costs and benefits. They look at what they gain and what they lose. They apply leverage.
They negotiate.
They respond to deterrence. But when you believe you are fulfilling divine prophecy, deterrence becomes complicated. When you believe that chaos itself is the goal, normal strategic calculus breaks down. This is why Western analysts keep getting Iran wrong. They keep applying rational nation-state logic to an ideologically driven regime, and the two frameworks don't match. Now here's where it gets even more
interesting. Israel, from a biblical
perspective, is operating under an entirely different set of prophecies and promises. The scripture that is most relevant here is found in the book of Ezekiel, specifically chapters 38 and 39. This passage describes a future coalition of nations that will come against Israel from the north and from surrounding regions. The nations listed, Gog, Magog, Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, Gomer, and Togarmah, have been identified by scholars across centuries as corresponding to what we would today recognize as Russia,
Iran, parts of Africa, and Turkey. Notice something.
Persia is explicitly named. Persia is modern-day Iran. The passage describes an overwhelming assault,
a massive coalition,
coming against a people who are described as living in peace in a land that was once desolate but has now been restored. Now, is that a description of modern Israel? A nation that was literally reborn in 1948 after 2,000 years of diaspora?
A nation that turned desert into farmland?
A nation that has repeatedly absorbed waves of immigration and rebuilt? A nation that is currently living under military threat from a coalition of nations that includes Iran, Russia-aligned forces, Hezbollah in the north, and multiple other actors. The parallels are striking. And here is what Ezekiel says happens next. God himself intervenes. Not through human military power, not through alliance agreements, not through diplomatic negotiation, directly, supernaturally, in a way that is unmistakable. The passage says the invading forces are struck with confusion, with earthquake, with torrential rain, with hailstones, with fire and brimstone. The attacking coalition is described
as turning on itself. And then here's the critical part. The nations of the world look at what happened and they
recognize that something beyond human explanation has occurred. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not saying that what we are watching right now is the direct, literal fulfillment of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Scholars disagree about the timeline. Scholars disagree about whether we're in the build-up or the event itself. There are serious theological debates about what preconditions
must be in place. But what I am saying is
the trajectory of what we are watching aligns with the general direction of what these ancient texts describe. And that alignment is not something you should dismiss with a wave of your hand. Because even if you are not a religious person, the historical accuracy of biblical prophecy about the nation of Israel is something that demands intellectual engagement. Here's what I mean. In 70 AD, Rome destroyed Jerusalem. The Jewish people were scattered to the four corners of the earth. Every serious historian and scholar of that era, and for centuries afterward, would have told you that the Jewish people were finished as a nation.
Permanently dispersed, gone, and yet.
In 1948, after the most systematic attempt at genocide in human history, the Jewish people returned to their ancestral land, declared statehood, were immediately attacked by 5 Arab armies, and survived. That was prophesied. Not metaphorically, literally, specifically in multiple Old Testament texts, including Ezekiel 36 and 37, which describe the physical restoration of the land and the people, written over 2,500 years before it happened. So when the same author, Ezekiel, writes about what happens to the coalition that attacks Israel in the latter days, that is not something to skip past lightly. That is something to pay very close attention to. Now let's bring this back to the strategic and military dimension, because biblical prophecy doesn't operate in a vacuum. It operates through history, through events, through decisions made by real people with real consequences, and right now, several strategic decisions are being made that will determine what comes next. Let's talk about Israel's decision-making framework. Israel's response to the Iranian strike was
measured, careful, precise, rather than a massive retaliatory strike that
could have triggered a full regional war. Israel chose a targeted, surgical response that sent a clear message without crossing certain lines. That decision was made for multiple reasons. First, Israel wanted to demonstrate to its allies, particularly the United States, that it was not going to drag everyone into an uncontrolled escalation. Second, Israel wanted to demonstrate to Iran and to the watching world that it could reach inside Iranian territory with precision. The strike on Isfahan was not random. Isfahan is home to one of Iran's most important air defense systems and is in proximity to nuclear facilities. Israel was sending a message: we can reach you, we can be precise, and we chose to be restrained or get to this time. Third, Israel is playing a long game. This is something that most commentators miss completely. Israel is not trying to win a single battle. Israel is trying to survive as a civilization. Those are two completely different objectives, and they require completely different strategies. A single battle strategy says, hit as hard as you can right now. A civilization survival strategy says, hit hard enough to deter, preserve your alliances, maintain your technological advantage, protect your population, and stay in the game for the long run. Israel has been playing the civilization survival game for 76 years. They are very good at it, and here's what that game looks like right now.